The Ramchal had explained that in terms of the soul, the neshama, the level of purity of the soul, the immensity of the soul, the illumination of the soul, if it would be infused in the body as it is, one would not have any choice. Why? Because despite the earthiness of the soul, it's made of the most base material, earthiness, coarseness. The infusion of this level of spirituality would refine it and bring it to a level that it would assume all spiritual characteristics. That's what it would be. So what did God have to do? God minimized the soul. He suppressed all its qualities, infused it in the body, and now it's a composite and there's a balance. And now the human being has a choice. You're at a crossroads. Where do you go? Do you follow the spiritual path? Do you follow the material path? And the material path is overwhelmingly attractive, because that's something you feel, you sense. That's what it is. Although intellectually you understand something, just as a person who's an addict, he can read all the material about addiction. Once he's addicted, as much as he understands the consequences of partaking of whatever that substance may be, it's irrelevant. The moment he craves, he has to fight his demons to be able to take control over his life. That's identically who we are. After the sin of Adam, where he became addicted to the material, because evil was integrated in his being as a result of that fruit, you have the ability to meet the challenge, but it's not an easy one. It's not simple. The challenge is overwhelming, but you have the ability to be able to deal with it. Now, but he says, if in fact the soul would be in its original form, its magnitude, its illumination, despite the substance addiction that the physicality has, it would totally vaporize it and refine it, and the person would be a spiritual being. That's what he'd be. Now, the Gemara tells us in Nida, the last tractate of Talmud, that before a child is born, there's an angel that teaches that child the Torah's entirety. The child sees from one end of the world to the other. Meaning, although there is a fetus, and that fetus is a human being because it has a soul, but it doesn't have the handicap of being a physical being. At that moment, before it leaves the mother's womb, that child is all soul. And therefore, it has all the capacity of a spiritual being. It's taught the Torah's entirety by this angel. It sees from one end to the world to the other, means it has absolute clarity. There are no barriers. The moment the child is born, before it's born, the angel touches the mouth of the child forgets everything, and comes in as an unintelligible being to develop, if it can develop, as a normal human being. What is that, the value of that angel teaching that child before he comes into existence? What's the value? If you forget it, what's the value? The answer is whatever the potential of that person is in life, the angel infuses that child, the soul, with all that knowledge and all the effects and value of what that potential is. Now the child, through his life, has to come upon various situations to actualize that potential, which was inserted and infused into the soul by the angel. That is the potential of the person. So the degree of Torah, the breadth, the depth, and the level of ability to be able to achieve, potentially it's all there. Now it's up to you what choices you make. If you make the right choices, you're able to come upon that potential. The potential which the angel infused in your soul to give you all those abilities to achieve that. If you choose differently, it'll remain dormant. It's all potential. And it's left unattended, not addressed. And therefore it's beautiful. The reason why the human being is called Adam because he was made from the earth. The word in Hebrew for earth is Adama. That's the word. Adam was called Adam because he was made from the earth. So the word, I always say over the name of the Maral of Prague, the animal was created on the sixth day. The animal, domestic, undomestic, was also created from the earth. Except the animal is called Behema. A behema is an animal. A human is called Adam. So the Maral explains, what is earth? You could have virgin soil. If you leave it unattended, you don't cultivate it, you don't plant it, what is it? It's a clump of earth. But if you go and you appreciate its potential, its value, and you cultivate it, you plant it, all life comes out of that earth. The potential is unlimited. Identically, what is a human being? A human being, when he's born to this existence, he's Adam, he's Adama, he's like a piece of that virgin soil. What you're able to reap from this is, it's not even fathom to what degree you're able to reap out of that person. But what happens if the person doesn't address those qualities? You take virgin soil and you turn it into a cemetery. You may be using the location, but in terms of the innate value of that location, you're not using that location. You're not using its value. Identically, the human being, if you don't address what you're meant to be, to address that potential, it remains dormant. Not only that, you go in the other direction. You destroy it. Because if you go after, you follow the earthiness of that body, all that evil that initially was implanted it by the tree of knowledge, it becomes self-destructive. And it advances, intensifies until ultimately it will be destroyed. It's like it's known fact that if the droughts extend over a period of time, we talk about the Dust Bowl. In the Midwest, if it doesn't rain over a number of years, eventually you had fertile soil, it becomes arid, and eventually becomes desert land. Unless it's attended to, not only does it retain its quality, it loses its quality due to the circumstance. Identically, the human being, if he doesn't address his potential, which is that virgin soil, Odom Adama, ultimately, where does he go? He intensifies the evil. The evil actually plays on itself. And it becomes more of it, because every action you take brings about a reaction, a result, a consequence. And that consequence is something very extreme in the negative. That's the idea. So it's interesting now. So when God takes this enormous soul, which is luminous and has the ability to refine and purify the physicality of the body, what is the dimension of that soul? The original dimension of that soul is its potential. The angel is sent to infuse it, to fully fill it with its potential. I'll give you an example. This is a little facetious. Person has a Mercedes, paid a fortune for it, fills the tank with gas, never puts on the motor, never drives out of that underground parking lot. The tank is there, the car is going nowhere. It just sits. But the tank is full, the soul is infused. But unless you do something to turn that key and take the action and take the initiative, it remains dormant. Not only does it remain dormant, if you don't use it, what happens? If you ever read the manual in a car, even if you don't, people who, they used to call them the snowbirds, they go to Florida, you have to have an oil change every once in a while, even if you don't drive the car. If that oil sits in there, the internal part of it starts corroding. There's corrosion. You let that soul and you don't attend to its needs, the spirituality starts corroding. And it's overtaken by all this corrosion, which is the earthiness of the body, which takes it to a more extreme level of negative, which is more contrary to spirituality than initially when it was put in a location of balance. That's the understanding. I always say from Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, what is the closest proximity-wise location, yet the furthest location on the planet? Proximity-wise from the brain to the heart, it's not very far. But in terms of distance-wise, to be able to take what's in the brain and infuse it in the heart, to internalize it, A lifetime is not sufficient. We understand many things, but despite our understanding, despite our level of clarity, somehow we have difficulty integrating and inserting and internalizing that, and we only sense what we sense, which is our physicality. And therefore, we succeed, we fail, even we understand, because there's always that physicality, that mundaneness tugging at us, which continuously creates these blind spots, despite we know. We just read in Pirkei Avos, beginning of this third chapter. If you consider three things, you'll never sin. You'll never come to the clutches of sin. From where you come, where you're going, and before who you will give a reckoning. If you're cognizant of those three things, you'll never sin. But unfortunately, we're not continually cognizant. And we feel because our inclination allows us to feel we're entitled to do many things. And we have a need to do them. And we say, I can't help myself. There's no such thing as you can't help yourself. If you can't help yourself, there's no liability. But again, we believe we can't help ourselves. And if we do a little bit, is it so terrible? Even if you're an observant Jew. But again, because we don't appreciate the consequence of even a little bit of failing, of slippage. You know, it's interesting. I always bring out the point. Anybody who lived in Russia during the Stalin era was a known fact. With Stalin, even if he suspected you that you may have said one word out of order, you know where you were destined to Siberia, to the Gulag, and so people were afraid even to speak, because maybe somebody would hear the word and misinterpret it and construe it as something else, take it out of context, and their lives are over. Their families are over. So there was such a level of, they were a little paralyzed. The society was paralyzed under his level of cruelty was such a degree not to be believed. And that's how we kept people in check. It created this ongoing cognizance that you couldn't get out of your mind. You never knew who was listening, who was, and what the consequence of that would be. Lahavdil elef abdolos. Everything is seen, everything's recorded, and we're held accountable, but only for what we really did. There's no misconstruing of reality. The evidence is foolproof. It's exacting the evidence. And God is merciful. He'll give you endless chances to make corrections. He'll even assist you to open your eyes. Sometimes you fall, and that fall should alert you that there's a problem. But yet, some people don't wake up. They attribute it to something else other than it is. You know, a person has a seizure, and he starts shaking. So he says to his wife, could you check the thermostat? I think it may be too cold in the house. If anybody knows what a seizure is, it has nothing to do with the temperature in the room. You understand? A person has a seizure. A Kodesh Baruch Hu sends him a seizure. You know something. Maybe I didn't take my Vicks cough drops this morning, or my Geritol. He'll wake up. But people, we attribute to everything but what we should attribute it to. As they say in English, we don't get it. God wants to alert us continuously. He wants to give us endless chances. And he does give us endless chances. And yet, you know, it's interesting. As you get older, I mean old age, as you mature, and you live life a little bit, you realize nobody's life is perfect. There's no perfect life. They used to say, life is not a bowl of cherries. It's a bed of roses. There's plenty of stickers in those roses. There's a sticker bush. Plenty of pricks. You get lacerated, you got that. But yet, and it's not. Why couldn't God make life perfect? If God, basically life is pretty good, what does he have to somehow throw a monkey wrench in it to make it? It's not so simple. Why? And truth is, that's a kindness. It's to wake you up, to give you an alert. It's not. But you know what the problem is? But nobody's life is perfect. You said, well, that's what life's all about. But that amenity that God gives that life is not perfect. That's for every human being to understand that if everything is so supposed to be good, why do we have this problem? And medicine, science are trying to work out all the kinks that it should be perfect. But the more it becomes perfect, the more imperfect it becomes. And that's a reality. And that's why society is falling apart. Because they believe the imperfection is, because it's not perfect enough. And they focus on perfection and they leave, you worry about the temperature you go down, check the boiler, God forbid, and you leave the child in the bathtub and the child drowns. But you worry about the temperature of the water. The swimming pool. Worry about the swimming pool. It's not deep enough, it's not long enough. So that's your focus. But again, all the imperfections of existence is only to say, as it's imperfect, we're imperfect. And we have to address those imperfections. But that's all what we call choice. That's challenge. This is the challenges of life. Somebody sent me last night a video. I don't know if you saw it. Evidently, it was literally what we call a Kiddush Hashem. In Israel, I don't know who the woman is. I have to find out who she is. She's definitely part of the Israeli government because she had security all around her. And there was an Israeli flag, and she spoke in Hebrew. And she spoke about how we have to appreciate, and she's not for sure not very observant. The way she looked and her whole persona, and she said things, you think a tzaddik is speaking. How we have to appreciate our heritage, how we have to appreciate the Torah, how we have to appreciate people who study Torah, how we have to appreciate the observant soldiers who fight in the IDF, and they are the core. And we have various fronts. We have to address many battles. You have the physical battlefront, you have the spiritual battlefront, and the level of chesed, of literally giving this among the observant community, it's unlimited, unending. There's nothing comparable to it. And she keeps speaking and speaking. A Kiddush Hashem, sanctification of God's name. Say a religious person, he's tooting his own horn. This woman is not an observant person. And despite that, she's speaking with such reverence and appreciation and speaking about God's Torah and what God is to us and why we are that. It's only because our connection to God, that's basic. She speaks for about 10 minutes. But again, it's something not to be believed. It's not the regular vernacular of a secular Jew to speak this way. But yet she has this level of clarity and appreciates what the value is and what the contribution is. But that's what we call Kiddush Hashem. Despite all the smoke screens, despite all the distortions of life, despite all the questions, we don't have all the answers. We don't. But even though we don't have all the answers, the question is, how serious is the question? If you have the core belief and the core trust, the question is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Person gets sick, God forbid. But basically, a person believes in God. Do you have a question to God? Why did you make me sick? Why is my genetic profile different than others? That's the way it is. You make the best of life. You thank God for what he gave you, for the good things. That's what it is. It's not perfect, but it's okay. Despite the imperfection, focus on the value. And that's what life is all about. What's the difference between an optimist and a pessimist? The pessimist always looks at the cup half empty. The optimist looks, it's half full. We'll get there. We'll address it. It's good enough. Hopefully it'll get better. That's the difference. But again, if you have that core belief and trust, I'm appreciative. I'll pray for more. I know this is just not random. It's for a purpose. And whatever that purpose is, I have to live within that purpose. And I have to be and do the right thing. I can't choose my own direction. There is a master. And that master makes that determination. About the professed atheist. And I'm in his office and we're talking, and Sparring gets a call. And he had come back from some trip in the out in the Pacific somewhere, and he's sharing with this person the schools of fish. He went scuba diving, and he saw schools of fish in Polynesia. Schools of fish. And he gets off the phone and he says to me, Rabbi, you probably don't even know what that is. Because you're this provincial Jew. You don't know what the schools of fish in Polynesia are all about. So I said to him, I want to explain you something. It's true, I don't. But you want to know something? Let me ask you a question. If a person has a dollar in his pocket and he's walking down the street and he sees a homeless person and the person is truly needy, and the dollar will make a difference in his life, and you have a family at home which you have to feed, which is your first responsibility to your wife and your children, and you take that dollar and give it to this homeless person, and as a result of that, you can't feed your family. Is that an act of kindness, or is that an act of cruelty, shirking responsibility to family? Of course, your first priority is your wife and children. As much as you did kindness to that person, but that kindness is cruelty to your family. Because the cost factor is your family don't have what to eat. You don't have meats to feed them. So I said to him, we only have so many years in life. There's a lot of things to learn in this world. I, as a Jew, God gave me a body of knowledge to be able to live and address my purpose. It's called Torah Judaism. There's a Talmud. You have to study it, the laws. And the more expert you become, the more perfect you become. And you generate more positiveness. So if I take that time that's supposed to be allocated for purpose and objective, and I siphon it off and study about the schools of fish in Polynesia, there's nothing wrong with studying about them. What am I doing? I'm expending time, which is reserved for what life is all about, to address the schools of fish in Polynesia. So therefore, do you think I feel I'm a less of a person because I don't know about the schools of fish in Polynesia? No. What I know, see, he says, I want to ask you a question. You know about baseball? I said, I'm not into baseball, but I know a little bit about baseball. He says, name a few baseball players. So I said to him, you ever hear Pee Wee Reese? You ever hear of Sandy Koufax? You ever hear this, that? I said, remember with the Dodgers when they were in New York? He said, Rabbi, you know so much. I said, you know something? It's meaningless. It has no value whatsoever. It doesn't mean anything. Fish in Polynesia. Tell me, what are you going to do with it? Put it in your pipe and smoke it. What's its value? But what I know, which you don't know, that's what my life's all about. So not knowing, do you think I feel inferior because I don't know what you know? I don't feel inferior. You have what I don't have, material-wise. Do I feel that I'm less than you? No, it doesn't mean anything. Because that's what life is all about. This person, he bought the Forward newspaper. So he says to me, do you know I bought this Forward newspaper? Because I turned it into an English paper because I want Jews who are unaffiliated to write about Jewish topics, to make them, aware about Jewishness. That's why I bought it. So when he originally bought the paper, whatever he paid, I'm at his office, he gets a call from the editor that unless he has a $4 million infusion of capital, the paper's going out of business. And he sees, I laugh. So he says to me, here I'm dealing with a problem. They're going to shut down the newspaper and you're laughing. I said, I want to ask you a question. When originally you bought the paper, you asked me what I thought. And I said to you then, you might as well take your money and put it down the sewer. That's the value of that investment. And you got all upset. Rabbi, you Orthodox Jews, you only care about yourselves. You don't care about the rest of the Jews. I said, let me ask you a question. The subscribership, what's the median age? 65 and above. You think young people read the forwards? What are you talking about? You're deluding yourself. But we Orthodox Jews are not concerned about anything but ourselves. So where are you holding today? The paper, you're giving it away for nothing. They don't want to take it. And on top of that, he needs a $4 million cash infusion. So who is right, me or you? So you ask me why I'm smiling? Because again, you're dealing with what? Because then you push me away with such vehemence, saying I'm only concerned about myself, where you missed the boat, where you fooled yourself, you see what its value is. So he says to me, by the way, do you get a subscription? I said, no. He says, I'll give you a complimentary subscription to the forwards. I said, Michael, it's okay. I'm okay without it. You know, you could say there's an expression, you could skin a cat 9 ways. The evil inclination could skin a person unlimited ways. The Chofetz Chaim says, the Talmud says that based on a verse that the evil inclination is like a fly. In Hebrew, a fly is a zavuv. A fly. What's a fly? You take a fly, it's buzzing around your head. You shoo it away. When you shoo it away, what happens? It comes on the other side. As much as you shoo it away, it just keeps coming back. There's no let up. That's exactly evil inclination. You go in, you conquer this, you win this skirmish. There's another skirmish. There's another battle. It's every moment of our lives, from the time we come into existence till we check out, there's always that buzzing around our head. Always. So he says something interesting. You know, in Europe, you know, when we were kids in New York City, there were a number of Jewish newspapers, Yiddish papers. Yiddish. Why? Because the readership, there were many European Jews, they read Yiddish, even non-religious Jews. And they read, and you had about 3-4 different Jewish newspapers. Most of them went out of business because the readership shrunk. Jews didn't speak Yiddish. So you had 1 paper left, 2 papers left. In Europe, they must have 5-6 Jewish papers, different papers in every community. And what did it speak about? If you wanted to be in the know-how, what's going on in the world, you read the Jewish paper. So people, they didn't buy 1 paper. If you could afford it, people would buy every paper that was on the newsstand, they would buy it. So he says, after you read those papers, what do you know? You know what's going on in the world. And after that, what's its value? You're in the know. What's its value? No, truthfully, what's its value? To get an education, you study science, medicine, mathematics. The value is now you're knowledgeable in that area of knowledge. But knowing what's going on in the world, what's its value? You know what its value is? You're in the know. What's the value of being in the know? If you're not in the State Department, right? You don't have to read the newspaper to be in the know to read the newspaper if you're in the State Department. It's because when you meet people, you want to show them you're in the know. Because if they're in the know and you're not in the know, what do you feel? You're some kind of backward person. So you want to be in the know. So the value of being in the know is only to give yourself value in the other person's eyes. But tomorrow, being in the know from yesterday or last week's news, that's old news. You have to be in the know in the new news. So continuously you read these papers. How much time do you whittle away and waste by reading these papers? How many? And what's the accuracy of that news? There's a known fact, the Chazon Ish, very interesting. The Chazon Ish, who was the leading Torah sage during World War II, during the war, he lived in Israel at the time, in Bnei Brak, and he had to make many decisions because they would actually consult with him in many areas. And people who read the newspapers and they felt there were certain things he had to know about what was going on in Europe, they would open the newspaper before him and they would show him a certain article to read. He did not touch the paper. They would show him the article and we'd read the paper, looking at the paper. He didn't want why. This is what he said. Not only because it was a waste of time for him, because it says, Midvar Sheket Tirchok. A Jew is not supposed to be associated with falseness. The majority of news is already, even then, was slanted. Is it accurate? Not accurate? You don't know. You believe what you read. But they would pick the article, which was essential, crucial for what was going on in Europe, for the sake of saving Jews, and what to do to shore it up. They would show him the article, but he wouldn't even touch the newspaper. And we'd read it, And based on what he understood what he was reading, he would give a decision how to go about whether raising money to save Jews, instituting certain programs, whatever it was. So the value is only what if it has value. It has no value. There's no point in reading it. But again, so why do we read it? We want to be in the know. Why do you want to be in the know? Because you want to be valued. But why do you be valued? Shlomo Melch says in Mishlei, the wise man ever lived. When you have money, you got many friends. The moment you lose your money, they disappear. What happened? You're less wise today because you have less money. And when you have money, you're wiser. Answer is, people want to be associated with success. You're not successful. They have no reason to be associated with you. So what is the value of all that acknowledgement and honor? Nothing. It's all smoke and mirrors. It has no value. It's self-delusion. Focus on what's essential and crucial in life. Nobody's saying you should be a hermit. Nobody's saying that. But whatever association, whatever value should be, you should be valued for something which is intrinsically valuable. Whether it's ethics, morals, religion, role model, mentoring, whatever it is, to be a positive role model to others, okay? Well, I love when they praise me, because I have money, I bought that car, the whole town speaking about the car, the suit, the this, the that, the trip, the vacation. You spent so much on that vacation. You went on a safari, it cost you $100,000, and you took a photographer just to have it filmed, it cost you $25,000. It's worth more than the whole trip, because when you show it for the next 3 years to your friends, they're going to be envious that you can't believe it. Well, they'll feel good for you that you were able to afford something they couldn't, or you have the time and they don't have the time. That's the value. When I lived in Baltimore, we used to go to Washington very often with my children when they were young, and we'd visit the Smithsonian. So if you go to the Smithsonian and you go to the pavilions there, they had a pavilion which they had, it was an IMAX. It was a screen, a theater. The screen was about 6 stories high. And you sit in this theater and you'd see things about Africa, different things they would show. The color and how real it was. You felt like you were almost there. And in those years, for 50 cents, you went to the IMAX. That's all it cost, 50 cents. And children under 6 didn't cost anything. And it was beautiful, beautiful. Do I have to go to Africa to understand what the elephants are about and save the elephants or the chimpanzees and the gorillas and the whatever it is? Maybe we have to learn about what Homo sapiens are, maybe about humanity a little bit. Maybe that's what we have to focus on. So again, why go to Africa? You can I could read and see films, almost the equivalent of experience it, simulating everything there. It means to go there. It means to be in that Land Rover. We have the mud up to the windows, and you keep going, and you have these natives running along with you with sticks. And if an animal approaches, they hit the animal and chase it away. You know how exciting that is? That thrill you don't get on the IMAX or on simulation. You don't get the same thrill. This is what life's all about.